Hello and welcome to the Spare Change podcast. Today I'll be discussing death, taxes related to death, and estate planning. So, overall, some of the things I'd like to talk about today in regards to estate planning are building out your will, understanding how your investments and assets will be distributed to your beneficiaries, and how to plan ahead now so that you run into less issues when it comes to either a change in your health or a significant impact to your assets and how you plan for your beneficiaries to receive them. So, one of the first things I'd like to say is this is a relevant issue to me because not only am I going to die at some point, but I'm currently experiencing the loss of family members with both my family and my wife's family. I lost my dad in September. My wife lost her mom in September, a week after my dad. So just understanding that it's a very relevant topic in my life, and understanding that everyone that we know is going to die at some point, as including ourselves and those that we wish to provide for. It is extremely important to understand where our planning efforts are. So let's jump into it. The main idea of death planning and estate planning for most people is a living will or last will and testament, basically to allow for the distribution of your assets as you see it fit. Let's say you didn't have a will in place. You are then intestate, which is a term used in the U.S. bar, discussing those who do not have a will to cover them will have their assets distributed per the state and federal regulations for their state. And that's an important topic I'd like to cover, is that state regulations can impact your estate planning if you don't specifically determine where your assets are to be distributed. For instance, if you didn't want to give your assets directly to your spouse and children, if you had other plans that might not go according to your plan, if you were not to have a will in place, if you wanted to give it to like a sibling or something, you're typically looking at state regulation that would push those assets to your spouse and children prior to any external family members outside of your immediate. If you were unmarried, it might be different. You might want to plan ahead and say, well, I want my assets to go to so-and-so, someone that you trust. It might not go that way. It might go to one of your siblings or to your parents. And it's important to understand that the writing of a will and the officiating of a will through probate or another lawyer or attorney is very valuable, in the idea that it can provide legal guidance for whoever the executor of your will is, and they can follow your guidance rather than the state's default guidance for those without wills. Some of the things to consider when writing your will, if you did have children or you did have a spouse, you think about those accounts that are associated with the people that you're trying to provide for. For instance, a joint account, does it have rights of survivorship? So joint accounts with rights of survivorship, upon your death, the assets within those accounts are transferred to the surviving account owner. And beyond that point, let's say both owners were to die, they would then be transferred to beneficiaries, um, either by how the state would dictate or how your will and testament would dictate. Um, in the aspect of giving to your children and providing for your children, we can talk uniform gift to minors and uniform transfers to minors accounts. So the way those work is a custodian is assigned over the account, and the benefactor of the account will always be the minor associated with the account when they turn 18. And those accounts are within the custodian social security number. So if you were the custodian and you pass away, but you want someone to still be able to coordinate all things related to the uniform gifts to minors or uniform transfers to minors accounts, then you would designate a guardian or custodian within your will to take your place and continue providing for your children or whoever you're providing to through those types of accounts. Some other things include the planning of your personal property. There are some things that fall into non-probate assets that would just transfer per the will immediately or transfer per the designated account holders immediately, rather than following just state regulation or the will and finding those determining factors. You can avoid a lot of that process with non-probate assets. I actually have a list of what assets fall into that category. Give me one moment. So non-probate property, thinking joint owned property, trusts, annuities and retirement benefits, life insurance, all of those things have designated beneficiaries. They won't be under the requirements of will and testament. They won't have to go through a probate lawyer. All of those types of assets have a significant advantage in that they don't have to go through the additional processes of a will and testament. Some things that you should be aware of are the taxes associated with estate tax and gifts tax and generationally skipped transfers. I'll explain what these things mean. Give me another moment really quickly. I'll provide the resources that I'm referencing as well. So in 2017, there was a Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was enacted, providing the limit to be $10 million for estate, gift, and generation skipping transfer tax through 2025, and it would revert on January 1st of 2026. So that's currently what we look at for estate taxes, gift taxes, and generation skipping transfer taxes. So as far as estate taxes, we're talking everything that would be transferred based on your assets, your estate, what those tax rates would be. So adjusted for inflation in the year 2022, as of right now, is $12,060,000. That is the limit before tax, and where the tax exemption stops for estate planning. So let's say you have assets that exceed that dollar value, then you would have to look at gifting or look at generation skipping transfers. So generation skipping transfers is like rather than to your spouse or children, it goes to your grandchildren or so on. Someone that wouldn't be typically designated as a beneficiary of your assets. I apologize if my video or audio is lagging. I'm dealing with some internet issues as well. That being said, you can plan ahead today in those frameworks by putting yourself in a situation where you've got a will, you've had the will witnessed by 2-3 people, depends on, again, state regulations, state laws, but preparing now and ensuring that your assets and the things that you're trying to take care of can be provided to the people you're trying to provide for. That's the main topic here today. When we talk about dying as well, another idea is life insurance. And there's two types of life insurance, or trying to think of the word, just protections and insurance related to your estate. So typically those fall into, you've got term and lifetime policies. So what your term doesn't do that a lifetime policy would is, terms don't allow you to draw loans against the account itself, and lifetime does, as I understand it. I'm sure that there might be more legalities behind that I don't have the complex understanding about, but I think it's very fundamentally important to understand what policies you have in place to protect your family in case that you are no longer there to support them. And let's say that you pass away. It's very important to understand that there are ways to protect your family from those kinds of issues. Let's see, what else can we talk about as it relates to preparation for death and taxes related to your estate, and how you can provide for your family beyond the typical, oh, well, I'm preparing, sure. I know there's a survivorship benefit program. I'll pull up the exact details, but for military specifically, beyond the limitation and scope of service members group life insurance, there are additional resources. So give me just a moment to pull that up as well. Apologize for the gap in time here. I'm gonna try and get this resource up as quickly as possible so I can explain it in detail without missing anything. So a survivor benefit program specific for military. Looks like it didn't pull up the article that I was looking for. Okay, so it matters a little less whether or not I can pull up the details, but there are plenty of resources available. The resources that I have discussed today include things from Nixon Peabody, their blog, and they discuss trusts and estates. I will provide that in the description below. Also, the American Bar Association, they deal with all things U.S. tax laws, legal preparations for people in the U.S., and all the legal processes in America overall. Additionally, I have been studying in detail the assets and account management portions of this discussion as it relates to individuals who are looking to protect their wealth and provide for their families. Okay. Let me see if I can't pull this up. Yeah, it's going to take me a minute to Google this, but I really do want to provide that last resource. So under the military pay .defense.gov, there's an overview of the survivor benefit plan. And what that does is it allows a retiree to ensure after death a continuous lifetime annuity for their dependents based on a percentage of their retired pay. So that program is good for folks who have retirements within the military industry. And the maximum of that annuity is 55% of the member's retired pay. And then the elected base amount for their, assuming the highest amount. And the coverage for your spouse and children is low in comparison to other available plans. And while that may be a limited group, I do in providing these resources, I hope that it can help someone. And it helps people mitigate risks associated with an unplanned death or sickness, and outliving a benefit that someone would be able to receive without the resources that we've talked about today. Trying to keep this one short and sweet, more or less a discussion of what's available to you as a estate planning and life insurance and tax mitigation and passing your assets on to your loved ones. That is the main discussion here. Hopefully there's been something of value in this discussion for everyone listening. And I would hope that if you have any questions, you would reach out on Instagram to Spare Change Podcast. I've provided links below on how you can reach us and how you can hold these discussions outside of just today's episode or a comments section. I'm more than open to learning more. I'm sure there's things I missed, but just a brief discussion on death benefits and providing for your family when you're not there. All right. Have a great day.